Bem-vindo ao Deep Dumps. No Deep Dumps, nossa missão é ajudá-lo a passar nos exames de certificação com confiança. Acesse os exames de prática mais recentes, PDFs e testes online, sempre atualizados conforme os padrões reais. Com nosso material pronto para o exame, você terá os recursos certos sempre à mão. Milhares de alunos confiam no Deep Dumps, e muitos conquistam a aprovação já na primeira tentativa. Oferecemos suporte 24 de julho por e-mail ou chat ao vivo. E nossos especialistas estão prontos para esclarecer dúvidas e orientá-lo passo a passo. Baixe as perguntas e respostas em PDF. Pratique com questões de qualidade e explicações claras. E avance rumo ao sucesso garantido.
Question 1. A global organization operates data centers in many countries. There are private network links between these data centers because all business data, but not metadata, must be exchanged over these private network connections. The organization does not currently use AWS in any way. The strategic decision has just been made to rigorously minimize IT operations effort and investment going forward. What combination of deployment options of the Anypoint Platform Control Plane and Runtime Plane best serves this organization at the start of this strategic journey? Option A. MuleSoft hosted Anypoint Platform Control Plane Cloud Hub Shared Worker Cloud in multiple AWS regions. Option B. MuleSoft hosted Anypoint Platform Control Plane Customer Hosted Runtime Plane in multiple AWS regions. Option C. MuleSoft hosted Anypoint Platform Control Plane Customer Hosted Runtime Plane in each data center. Option D. Anypoint Platform, Private Cloud Edition Customer Hosted Runtime Plane in each data center. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option C. MuleSoft hosted Anypoint Platform Control Plane Customer Hosted Runtime Plane in each data center. Question 2. Anypoint Exchange is required to maintain the source code of some of the assets committed to it, such as connectors, templates, and API specifications. What is the best way to use an organization's source code management (SCM) system in this context? Option A. Organizations need to point Anypoint Exchange to their SCM system so Anypoint Exchange can pull source code when requested by developers and provide it to Anypoint Studio. Option B. Organizations need to use Anypoint Exchange as the main SCM system to centralize versioning and avoid code duplication. Option C. Organizations can continue to use an SCM system of their choice for branching and merging, as long as they follow the branching and merging strategy enforced by Anypoint Exchange. Option D. Organizations should continue to use an SCM system of their choice, in addition to keeping source code for these asset types in Anypoint Exchange, thereby enabling parallel development, branching, and merging. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option D. Organizations should continue to use an SCM system of their choice, in addition to keeping source code for these asset types in Anypoint Exchange, thereby enabling parallel development, branching, and merging. Question 3. An organization is designing an integration solution to replicate financial transaction data from a legacy system into a data warehouse. DWH. The DWH must contain a daily snapshot of financial transactions, to be delivered as a CSV file. Daily transaction volume exceeds tens of millions of records, with significant spikes in volume during popular shopping periods. What is the most appropriate integration style for an integration solution that meets the organization's current requirements? Option A. API-led connectivity. Option B. Batch-triggered ETL. Option C. Event-driven architecture. Option D. Microservice architecture. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B, batch-triggered ETL. Question 4. A set of integration mule applications, some of which expose APIs, are being created to enable a new business process. Various stakeholders may be impacted by this. These stakeholders are a combination of semi-technical users who understand basic integration terminology and concepts such as JSON and XML, and technically skilled potential consumers of the mule applications and APIs. What is an effective way for the project team responsible for the mule applications and APIs being built to communicate with these stakeholders using Anypoint platform and its supplied toolset? Option A. Create Anypoint exchange entries with pages elaborating the integration design, including API notebooks, where applicable, to help the stakeholders understand and interact with the mule applications and APIs at various levels of technical depth. Option B. Stakeholders. Option C. Use Anypoint Design Center to implement the mule applications and APIs and give the various stakeholders access to these Design Center projects, so they can collaborate and provide feedback. Option D. Use Anypoint Exchange to register the various mule applications and APIs and share the RAML definitions with the stakeholders, so they can be discovered. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option A. Create Anypoint exchange entries with pages elaborating the integration design, including API notebooks, where applicable, to help the stakeholders understand and interact with the mule applications and APIs at various levels of technical depth. Question 5. A mule application is being designed to do the following. Step 1. Read a sales order message from a JMS queue, where each sales order consists of a header and a list of sales order line items. Step 2. Insert the sales order header and each sales order line item into different tables in an RDBMS. Step 3. Insert the sales order header and the sum of the prices of all its sales order line items into a table in a different RDBMS. No sales order message can be lost, and the consistency of all sales order related information in both RDBMSs must be ensured at all times. What design choice, including choice of transactions and order of steps, addresses these requirements? Option A. 1. Read the JMS message, not in an XA transaction. 2. Perform each DB insert in a separate DB transaction. 3. Acknowledge the JMS message. Option B. 1. Read and acknowledge the JMS message, not in an XA transaction. 2. In a new XA transaction, perform both DB inserts. Option C. 1. Read the JMS message in an XA transaction. 2. In the same XA transaction, perform both DB inserts but do not acknowledge the JMS message. Option D. 1. Read the JMS message, not in an XA transaction. 2. Perform both DB inserts in one DB transaction. 3. Acknowledge the JMS message. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. 1. Read the JMS message in an XA transaction. 2. In the same XA transaction, perform both DB inserts but do not acknowledge the JMS message. Question 6. Refer to the exhibit. A mule application is being designed to be deployed to several Cloud Hub workers. The Mule application's integration logic is to replicate changed accounts from Salesforce to a back-end system every 5 minutes. A watermark will be used to only retrieve those Salesforce accounts that have been modified since the last time the integration logic ran. What is the most appropriate way to implement persistence for the watermark in order to support the required data replication integration? Logic. Option A. Persistent object store. Option B. Persistent cache scope. Option C. Persistent anypoint MQQ. Option D. Persistent VMQ. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option A. Persistent object store. Question 7. Refer to the exhibit. A shopping cart checkout process consists of a web store backend sending a sequence of API invocations to an experience API, which in turn invokes a process API. All API invocations are over HTTPS post. The Java Web Store backend executes in a Java EE application server, while all API implementations are Mule applications executing in a customer-hosted Mule runtime. End-to-end correlation of all HTTP requests and responses belonging to each individual checkout instance is required. This is to be done through a common correlation ID, so that all log entries written by the Web Store backend, experience API implementation, and process API implementation include the same correlation ID for all requests and responses belonging to the same checkout instance. What is the most efficient way? Using the least amount of custom coding or configuration. For the Web Store backend and the implementations of the Experience API and Process API to participate in end-to-end correlation of the API invocations for each checkout instance. Option A. The Experience API implementation generates a correlation ID for each incoming HTTP request and passes it to the Web Store backend in the HTTP response header. Option B. ID. Option C. The Web Store backend, being a Java EE application, backend, Experience API, and Process API implementations to generate and manage the correlation ID. Option D. Headers. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option B. ID. Question 8. Mule application A receives a request anypoint MQ message REQU with a payload containing a variable length list of request objects. Application A uses the for each scope to split the list into individual objects and sends each object as a message to an anypoint MQ. Queue. Service S listens on that queue, processes each message independently of all other messages, and sends a response message to a response queue. REQU. Assume successful response messages are returned by Service S for all request messages. What is required so that application A can ensure that the length and order of the list of objects in RESP and REQU match, while at the same time maximizing message throughput? Option A. Perform all communication involving Service S synchronously from within the for each scope, so objects in RESP are in the exact same order as request objects in REQU. Option B. Use a scatter-gather within the for each scope to ensure response message order. Configure the scatter-gather with a persistent object store. Option C. Keep track of the list length and all object indices in REQU, both in the for each scope and in all communication involving service. Use persistent storage when creating RESP. Option D. Use an async scope within the for each scope and collect response messages in a second for each scope in the order in which they arrive. Then send RESP using this list of responses. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option C. Keep track of the list length and all object indices in REQU, both in the for each scope and in all communication involving service. Use persistent storage when creating RESP. Question 9. Refer to the exhibit. A mule application is deployed to a cluster of 2 customer-hosted mule runtimes. The mule application has a flow that polls a database and another flow with an HTTP listener. HTTP clients send HTTP requests directly to individual cluster nodes. What happens to database polling and HTTP request handling in the time after the primary master node of the cluster has failed, but before that node is restarted? Option A. Database polling stops, all HTTP requests are rejected. Option B. Database polling stops, all HTTP requests continue to be accepted. Option C. Database polling continues, only HTTP requests sent to the remaining node continue to be accepted. Option D. Database polling continues, all HTTP requests continue to be accepted, but requests to the failed node incur increased latency. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. Database polling continues, only HTTP requests sent to the remaining node continue to be accepted. Question 10. What aspects of a CI/CD pipeline for Mule applications can be automated using MuleSoft provided Maven plugins? Option A. Import from API Designer. Compile. Package. Unit test. Deploy. Publish to Anypoint Exchange. Option B. Compile. Package. Unit test. Validate unit test coverage. Deploy. Option C. Compile. Package. Unit test. Deploy. Integration test. Option D. Compile. Package. Unit test. Deploy. Create associated API instances in API Manager. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. Compile, package, unit test, validate unit test coverage, deploy. Question 11. Refer to the exhibit. Anypoint platform supports role-based access control (RBAC) to features of the platform. An organization has configured an external identity provider for identity management with Anypoint platform. What aspects of RBAC must always be controlled from the Anypoint platform control plane and cannot be controlled via the external identity provider? Option A. Assigning Anypoint platform permissions to a role. Option B. Assigning Anypoint platform role S to a user. Option C. Controlling the business group within Anypoint platform to which the user belongs. Option D. Removing a user's access to Anypoint platform when they no longer work for the organization. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option A. Assigning Anypoint platform permissions to a role. Question 12. An integration Mule application is deployed to a customer-hosted multi-node Mule 4 runtime cluster. The Mule application uses a listener operation of a JMS connector to receive incoming messages from a JMS queue. How are the messages consumed by the Mule application? Option A. Regardless of the listener operation configuration, all messages are consumed by only the primary cluster node. Option B. Depending on the JMS provider's configuration, either all messages are consumed by only the primary cluster node or else all messages are consumed by all cluster nodes. Option C. Regardless of the listener operation configuration, all messages are consumed by all cluster nodes. Option D. Depending on the listener operation configuration, either all messages are consumed by only the primary cluster node or else each message is consumed by any one cluster node. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. Depending on the listener operation configuration. Either all messages are consumed by only the primary cluster node or else each message is consumed by any one cluster node. Question 13. Additional nodes are being added to an existing customer-hosted Mule runtime cluster to improve performance. Mule applications deployed to this cluster are invoked by API clients through a load balancer, which is also required to carry out this change. Option A. API implementations using an object store must be adjusted to recognize the new nodes and persist to them. Option B. A new load balancer must be provisioned to allow traffic to the new nodes in a round-robin fashion. Option C. External monitoring tools or log aggregators must be configured to recognize the new nodes. Option D. New firewall rules must be configured to accommodate communication between API clients and the new nodes. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. External monitoring tools or log aggregators must be configured to recognize the new nodes. Question 14. Refer to the exhibit. One of the back-end systems invoked by an API implementation enforces rate limits on the number of requests a particular client can make. Both the back-end system and the API implementation are deployed to several non-production environments in addition to production. Rate limiting of the back-end system applies to all non-production environments. The production environment, however, does not have any rate limiting, which is the most effective approach to conduct performance tests of the API implementation in a staging non-production environment. Option A. Use MUnit to simulate standard responses from the back-end system, then conduct performance tests to identify other bottlenecks in a system. Option B. Create a mocking service that replicates the back-end system's production performance characteristics, then configure the API implementation to use the mocking service and conduct the performance tests. Option C. Conduct scaled-down performance tests in the staging environment against the rate-limited back-end system, then upscale performance results to full production scale. Option D. Include logic within the API implementation that bypasses invocations of the back-end system in a performance test situation. Instead, invoking local stubs that replicate typical back-end system responses, then conduct performance tests using this API implementation. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. Create a mocking service that replicates the back-end system's production performance characteristics, then configure the API implementation to use the mocking service and conduct the performance tests. Question 15. An integration Mule application is being designed to process orders by submitting them to a back-end system for offline processing. Each order will be received by the Mule application through an HTTPS post and must be acknowledged immediately. Once acknowledged, the order will be submitted to a back-end system. Orders that cannot be successfully submitted due to rejections from the back-end system will need to be processed manually. Outside the back-end system, the Mule application will be deployed to a customer-hosted runtime and is able to use an existing active MQ broker if needed. The back-end system has a track record of unreliability both due to minor network connectivity issues and longer outages. What idiomatic, used for their intended purposes. Combination of Mule application components and active MQ queues are required to ensure automatic submission of orders to the backend system, while minimizing manual order processing. Option A. An on-error scope MuleSoft object store active MQ dead letter queue for manual processing. Option B. Until successful component active MQ long retry Q active MQ dead letter Q for manual processing. Option C. Until successful component MuleSoft object store active MQ is not needed or used. Option D. An on-error scope non-persistent VM active MQ dead letter Q for manual processing. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. Until successful component active MQ long retry Q active MQ dead letter Q for manual processing. Question 16. What operation can be performed through a JMX agent enabled in a Mule application? Option A. View object store entries. Option B. Replay an unsuccessful message. Option C. Deploy a Mule application. Option D. Set a particular log4j2 log level to trace. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. Set a particular log4j2 log level to trace. Question 17. A retailer is designing a data exchange interface to be used by its suppliers. The interface must support secure communication over the public internet. The interface must also work with a wide variety of programming languages and IT systems used by suppliers. What are suitable interface technologies for this data exchange that are secure, cross-platform, and internet-friendly, assuming that endpoint connectors exist for these interface technologies? Option A. CSV over FTP YAML over TLS JSON over HTTPS. Option B. SOAP over HTTPS IIOP over TLS gRPC over HTTPS. Option C. Edifact XML over SFTP JSON, REST over HTTPS. Option D. XML over Active MQ XML over SFTP XML, REST over HTTPS. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. EDIFACT XML over SFTP JSON, REST over HTTPS. Question 18. Refer to the exhibit. A Mule 4 application has a parent flow that breaks up a JSON array payload into 200 separate items. Then sends each item one at a time inside an async scope to a VM queue. A second flow to process orders has a VM listener on the same VM queue. The rest of this flow processes each received item by writing the item to a database. This Mule application is deployed to 4 Cloud Hub workers with persistent queues enabled. What message processing guarantees are provided by the VM queue and the Cloud Hub workers? And how are VM messages routed among the Cloud Hub workers for each invocation of the parent flow under normal operating conditions where all the Cloud Hub workers remain online? Option A. Each item VM message is processed at least once by one arbitrary Cloud Hub worker. Each of the 4 Cloud Hub workers can be expected to process some item VM messages. Option B. All item VM messages are processed at most once by one arbitrary Cloud Hub worker. This one Cloud Hub worker processes all 200 item VM messages. Option C. All item VM messages are processed at least once by the same Cloud Hub worker where the parent flow was invoked. This one Cloud Hub worker processes all 200 item VM messages. Option D. Each item VM message is processed at most once by one Cloud Hub worker. With workers chosen in a deterministic round-robin fashion, each of the 4 Cloud Hub workers can be expected to process 1/4 of the item VM messages. About 50 items. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option A. Each item VM message is processed at least once by one arbitrary Cloud Hub worker. Each of the 4 Cloud Hub workers can be expected to process some item VM messages. Question 19. Refer to the exhibit. An organization deploys multiple Mule applications to the same customer-hosted Mule runtime. Many of these Mule applications must expose an HTTPS endpoint on the same port using a server-side certificate that rotates often. What is the most effective way to package the HTTP listener and package or store the server-side certificate when deploying these Mule applications, so the disruption caused by certificate rotation is minimized? Option A. Package the HTTPS listener configuration in a Mule domain project. Referencing it from all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint, store the server-side certificate in a shared file system location in the Mule runtimes class path, outside the Mule domain or any Mule application. Option B. Package the HTTPS listener configuration in a Mule domain project. Referencing it from all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint, package the server-side certificate in all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint. Option C. Package the HTTPS listener configuration in a Mule domain project. Referencing it from all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint, package the server-side certificate in the same Mule domain project. Option D. Package an HTTPS listener configuration in all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint, package the server-side certificate in a new Mule domain project. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option A. Package the HTTPS listener configuration in a Mule domain project. Referencing it from all Mule applications that need to expose an HTTPS endpoint, store the server-side certificate in a shared file system location in the Mule runtimes class path, outside the Mule domain or any Mule application. Question 20. What metrics about API invocations are available for visualization in custom charts using AnyPoint? Analytics. Option A. Request size. Request HTTP verbs. Response time. Option B. Request size. Number of requests. JDBC select operation result set size. Option C. Request size. Number of requests. JDBC select operation response time. Option D. Request size. Number of requests. Response size. Response time. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option D. Request size, number of requests, response size, response time. Question 21. Refer to the exhibit. A business process involves the receipt of a file from an external vendor over SFTP. The file needs to be parsed and its content processed, validated, and ultimately persisted to a database. The delivery mechanism is expected to change in the future as more vendors send similar files using other mechanisms such as file transfer or HTTP post. What is the most effective way to design for these requirements in order to minimize the impact of future change? Option A. Use a composite data source so files can be retrieved from various sources and delivered to a MuleSoft batch job for processing. Option B. Use a MuleSoft scatter gather and a MuleSoft batch job to handle the different files coming from different sources. Option C. Create a process API to receive the file and process it using a MuleSoft batch job while delegating the data save process to a system API. Option D. Create an API that receives the file and invokes a process API with the data contained in the file. Then have the process AP process the data using a MuleSoft batch job in other system apps as needed. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. Create an API that receives the file and invokes a process API with the data contained in the file. Then have the process API process the data using a MuleSoft batch job in other system apps as needed. Question 22. An integration Mule application is being designed to synchronize customer data between two systems. One system is an IBM mainframe and the other system is a Salesforce Marketing Cloud CRM instance. Both systems have been deployed in their typical configurations and are to be invoked using the native protocols provided by Salesforce and IBM. What interface technologies are the most straightforward and appropriate to use in this Mule application to interact with these systems? Assuming that endpoint connectors exist that implement these interface technologies. Option A. IBM DB Access CRM gRPC. Option B. IBM REST CRM REST. Option C. IBM Kix CRM SOAP. Option D. IBM Active MQ CRM REST. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. IBM Kix CRM SOAP. Question 23. An XA transaction is being configured that involves a JMS connector listening for incoming JMS messages. What is the meaning of the timeout attribute of the XA transaction? And what happens after the timeout expires? Option A. The time that is allowed to pass without the transaction being ended explicitly after the timeout. The transaction is forcefully rolled back. Option B. The time that is allowed to pass for stale JMS consumer threads to be destroyed after the timeout. A new JMS consumer thread is created. Option C. The time that is allowed to pass between receiving JMS messages on the same JMS connection after the timeout. A new JMS connection is established. Option D. The time that is allowed to pass between committing the transaction and the completion of the Mule flow after the timeout. Flow processing triggers an error. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option A. The time that is allowed to pass without the transaction being ended explicitly after the timeout. The transaction is forcefully rolled back. Question 24. A Mule application contains a batch job with two batch steps. Batch step 1 and batch step 2. A payload with 1000 records is received by the batch job. How many threads are used by the batch job to process records? And how does each batch step process records within the batch job? Option A. Each batch job uses several threads for the batch steps. Each batch step instance receives one record at a time as the payload. And batch step instances execute in parallel to process records and batch steps in any order as fast as possible. Option B. Each batch job uses several threads for the batch steps. Each batch step instance receives one record at a time as the payload. And records are processed in parallel within and between the two batch steps. Option C. Each batch job uses a single thread for all batch steps. Each batch step instance receives one record at a time as the payload. And records are processed in order. First through batch step 1 and then through batch step 2. Option D. Each batch job uses a single thread to process a configured block size of record. Each batch step instance receives a block of records as the payload. And blocks of records are processed in order. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. Each batch job uses several threads for the batch steps. Each batch step instance receives one record at a time as the payload, and records are processed in parallel within and between the two batch steps. Question 25. An API has been unit tested and is ready for integration testing. The API is governed by a client ID enforcement policy in all environments. What must the testing team do before they can start integration testing the API in the staging environment? Option A. They must request access to the staging environment and obtain the client ID and client secret for that environment to be used for testing API. Option B. They must request access to the API instance in the staging environment and obtain a client ID and client secret to be used for testing API. Option C. They must be assigned as an API version owner of the API in the staging environment. Option D. They must access the API portal and create an API notebook using the client ID and client secret supplied by the API portal in the staging environment. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. They must request access to the API instance in the staging environment and obtain a client ID and client secret to be used for testing API. Question 26. Refer to the exhibit. An organization is designing a mule application to receive data from one external business partner. The two companies currently have no shared IT infrastructure and do not want to establish one. Instead, all communication should be over the public internet, with no VPN. What endpoint connector can be used in the organization's mule application to securely receive data from this external business partner? Option A. SFTP connector. Option B. VM connector. Option C. Object Store connector. Option D. File connector. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option A, SFTP connector. Question 27. An organization's governance process requires project teams to get formal approval from all key stakeholders for all new integration design specifications. An integration mule application is being designed that interacts with various back-end systems. The mule application will be created using Anypoint Design Center or Anypoint Studio and will then be deployed to a customer-hosted runtime. What key elements should be included in the integration design specification when requesting approval for this mule application? Option A. A list of current and future consumers of the mule application and their contact details. Option B. Snapshots of the mule application's flows, including their error handling. Option C. SLAs and non-functional requirements to access the back-end systems. Option D. The credentials to access the back-end systems and contact details for the administrator of each system. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. SLAs and non-functional requirements to access the back-end systems. Question 28. What aspect of logging is only possible for mule applications deployed to customer-hosted mule runtimes, but not for mule applications deployed to Cloud Hub? Option A. To change log4j2 log levels in Anypoint Runtime Manager without having to restart the mule application. Option B. To log certain messages to a custom log category. Option C. To send mule application log entries to Splunk. Option D. To directly reference one shared and customized log4j2 XML file from multiple mule applications. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. To directly reference one shared and customized log4j2 XML file from multiple mule applications. Question 29. A team would like to create a project skeleton that developers can use as a starting point when creating API implementations with Anypoint Studio. This skeleton should help drive consistent use of best practices within the team. What type of Anypoint Exchange artifact should be added to Anypoint Exchange to publish the project skeleton? Option A. A RAML archetype in reusable trait definitions to be reused across API implementations. Option B. A custom asset with the default API implementation. Option C. An example of an API implementation following best practices. Option D. A mule application template with the key components and minimal integration logic. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. A mule application template with the key components and minimal integration logic. Question 30. What is required before an API implemented using the components of Anypoint platform can be managed and governed? By applying API policies on Anypoint platform. Option A. A RAML definition of the API must be created in API Designer so it can then be published to Anypoint Exchange. Option B. The API must be published to Anypoint Exchange and a corresponding API instance ID must be obtained from API Manager to be used in the API implementation. Option C. The API must be shared with the potential developers through an API portal so API consumers can interact with the API. Option D. The API implementation source code must be committed to a source control management system, such as GitHub. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. The API must be published to Anypoint Exchange and a corresponding API instance ID must be obtained from API Manager to be used in the API implementation. Question 31. An order microservice and a fulfillment microservice are being designed to communicate with their clients through message-based integration, and not through API invocations. The order microservice publishes an order message, a kind of command message, containing the details of an order to be fulfilled. The intention is that order messages are only consumed by one mule application. The fulfillment microservice. The fulfillment microservice consumes order messages, fulfills the order described therein, and then publishes an order fulfilled message, a kind of event message. Each order fulfilled message can be consumed by any interested mule application, and the order microservice is one such mule application. What is the most appropriate choice of message broker? And message destination. In this scenario, option A. Order messages are sent to an Anypoint MQ exchange. Order fulfilled messages are sent to an Anypoint MQ. Both microservices interact with Anypoint MQ as the message broker, which must therefore scale to support the load of both microservices. Option B. Order messages are sent to a JMS queue. Order fulfilled messages are sent to a JMS topic. Both microservices interact with the same JMS provider message broker instance, which must therefore scale to support the load of both microservices. Option C. Broker, so that both message brokers can be chosen and scaled to best support the load of each microservice. Option D. Order messages are sent to a JMS queue. Order fulfilled messages are sent to a JMS topic. The order microservice interacts with one JMS provider message broker, and the fulfillment microservice interacts with a different JMS provider, so that both message brokers can be chosen and scaled to best support the load of each microservice. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B. Order messages are sent to a JMS queue. Order fulfilled messages are sent to a JMS topic. Both microservices interact with the same JMS provider message broker instance, which must therefore scale to support the load of both microservices. Question 32. Refer to the exhibit. A Mule application is deployed to a multi-node Mule runtime cluster. The Mule application uses the competing consumer pattern among its cluster replicas to receive JMS messages from a JMS queue. To process each received JMS message, the following steps are performed in a flow. Step 1. The JMS correlation ID header is read from the received JMS message. Step 2. The Mule application invokes an idempotent SOAP web service over HTTPS. Passing the JMS correlation ID is one parameter in the SOAP request. Step 3. The response from the SOAP web service also returns the same JMS correlation ID. Step 4. The JMS correlation ID received from the SOAP web service is validated to be identical to the JMS correlation ID received in Step 1. Step 5. The Mule application creates a response JMS message, setting the JMS correlation ID message header to the validated JMS correlation ID and publishes that message to a response JMS queue. Where should the Mule application store the JMS correlation ID values received in Step 1 and Step 3 so that the validation in Step 4 can be performed, while also making the overall Mule application highly available, fault-tolerant, performant, and maintainable? Option A. Both correlation ID values should be stored in a persistent object store. Option B. The correlation ID value in Step 1 should be stored in a persistent object store. The correlation ID value in Step 3 should be stored as a Mule event, variable, attribute. Option C. Both correlation ID values should be stored as Mule event variables, attributes. Option D. Both correlation ID values should be stored in a non-persistent object store. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option C. Both correlation ID values should be stored as Mule event variables, attributes. Question 33. An organization is creating a set of new services that are critical for their business. The project team prefers using REST for all services but is willing to use SOAP with common WS** standards if a particular service requires it. What requirement would drive the team to use SOAP, WS** for a particular service? Option A. Must secure the service, requiring all consumers to submit a valid SAML token. Option B. Must support message acknowledgement and retry as part of the protocol. Option C. Must publish and share the service specification, including data formats, with the consumers of the service. Option D. Must use XML payloads for the service and ensure that it adheres to a specific schema. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option B. Must support message acknowledgement and retry as part of the protocol. Question 34. An organization uses a set of customer-hosted Mule runtimes that are managed using the MuleSoft-hosted control plane, which is a condition that can be alerted on from any point runtime manager without any custom components or custom coding. Option A. When an SSL certificate used by one of the deployed Mule applications is about to expire. Option B. When a Mule runtime on a given customer-hosted server is experiencing high memory consumption during certain periods. Option C. When a Mule runtime's customer-hosted server is about to run out of disk space. Option D. When the Mule runtime license installed on a Mule runtime is about to expire. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option B. When a Mule runtime on a given customer-hosted server is experiencing high memory consumption during certain periods. Question 35. A Mule application currently writes to two separate SQL Server database instances across the Internet using a single XA transaction. It is proposed to split this one transaction into two separate non-XA transactions with no other changes to the Mule application. What non-functional requirement can be expected to be negatively affected when implementing this change? Option A. Throughput. Option B. Availability. Option C. Response time. Option D. Consistency. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D, consistency. Question 36. An organization is designing the following two Mule applications that must share data via a common persistent object store instance. Mule application P will be deployed within their on-premises data center. Mule application C will run on Cloud Hub in an Anypoint VPC. The object store implementation used by Cloud Hub is the Anypoint Object Store version 2. OS v2. What type of object store S should be used? And what design gives both Mule applications access to the same object store instance? Option A. Application C and P both use the Object Store connector to access the Anypoint Object Store version 2. Option B. Application C and P both use the Object Store connector to access a persistent object store. Option C. Application C uses the Object Store connector to access a persistent object. Application P accesses the persistent object store via the Object Store REST API. Option D. Application P uses the Object Store connector to access a persistent object store. Application C accesses this persistent object store via the Object Store REST API through an IPsec tunnel. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option C. Application C uses the Object Store connector to access a persistent object. Application P accesses the persistent object store via the Object Store REST API. Question 37. An organization's security policies mandate complete control of the login credentials used to log into Anypoint platform. What feature of Anypoint platform should be used to meet this requirement? Option A. Federated Client Management. Option B. Federated Identity Management. Option C. Enterprise Security Module. Option D. Client ID Secret. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option B, Federated Identity Management. Question 38. Refer to the exhibit. An organization uses a two-node Mule runtime cluster to host one stateless API implementation. The API is accessed over HTTPS through a load balancer that uses round-robin for load distribution. Two additional nodes have been added to the cluster and the load balancer has been configured to recognize the new nodes with no other change to the load balancer. What average performance change is guaranteed to happen? Assuming all cluster nodes are fully operational. Option A. 50% reduction in the response time of the API. Option B. 100% increase in the throughput of the API. Option C. 50% reduction in the JVM heap memory consumed by each node. Option D. 50% reduction in the number of requests being received by each node. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is option D. 50% reduction in the number of requests being received by each node. Question 39. A popular retailer is designing a public API for its numerous business partners. Each business partner will invoke the API at the URL https api.acme.com, partners, version 1. The API implementation is estimated to require deployment to 5 Cloud Hub workers. The retailer has obtained a public X 509 certificate for the name AP. Acme. Com. Signed by a reputable CA. To be used as the server certificate. Where and how should the X 509 certificate and Mule applications be used to configure load balancing among the 5 Cloud Hub workers? And what DNS entries should be configured in order for the retailer to support its numerous business partners? Option A. Add the X 509 certificate to a Cloud Hub dedicated load balancer. DLB. Not to the Mule application, create a CNAME for a P. Acme. Com pointing to the DLB's a record. Option B. Add the X 509 certificate to the Mule application's deployable archive. Then configure a Cloud Hub dedicated load balancer. DLB. For each of the Mule application's Cloud Hub workers, create a CNAME for a P. Acme. Com pointing to the DLB's a record. Option C. Add the X 509 certificate to the Cloud Hub shared load balancer. SLB. Not to the Mule application, create a CNAME for a P. Acme. Com pointing to the SLB's a record. Option D. Add the X 509 certificate to the Mule application's deployable archive. Then configure the Cloud Hub shared load balancer. SLB. For each of the Mule application's Cloud Hub workers, create a CNAME for a P. Acme. Com pointing to the SLB's a record. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option A. Add the X 509 certificate to a Cloud Hub dedicated load balancer. DLB. Not to the Mule application, create a CNAME for a P. Acme. Com pointing to the DLB's a record. Question 40. An organization uses Mule runtimes which are managed by Anypoint Platform, Private Cloud Edition. What MuleSoft component is responsible for feeding analytics data to non-MuleSoft analytics platforms? Option A. Anypoint Runtime Manager. Option B. Anypoint Exchange. Option C. Anypoint API Manager. Option D. The Mule runtimes. Choose the correct answer. Correct answer is Option A. Anypoint Runtime Manager.